Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to week 29 of our Slow Stitch Along for 2024. Hello Stella. She's been racing up and down with Fred. I had to wait a minute for them to stop because it was quite manic. Anyway, this week I would like to look at mandalas, and what I'm showing you here is a mandala that I made all by machine in 2012, and it actually hung at the Festival of Quilts. It's quite difficult. I'm sorry I'm handheld, so I'm trying not to be wobbly. Oh, and I've left my microphone case there. Apologies. I'll zoom back in. So I drew the design myself on a square of freezer paper that was 18 inches square, and then I cut it out. Sorry about my fingers. I must find a better solution for handheld. I cut out the shapes. These are the shapes. And then I exploded it. So it started off as an 18-inch square, and then when I laid it on the background cloth, this large piece of its Kona black, I exploded. So the most outer shapes are right out here. Do you see? So I drew it 18-inch square, cut the pieces out, and then, I think I folded. It was 12 years ago. It's hard to remember. I think I pressed crease lines with an iron or something like that and laid them out. And then they were fusible, appliqued on in those days. And then if I go back in again, you can see that around the edge of every piece I did satin stitch by machine. Gosh, that was time consuming. Can you see the black satin stitch? Because I wanted it to look like the leading in a stained glass window. I hope you can see. And then in all the spaces in between, if I go in towards the centre here, I did free machine quilting. So that's, if you don't know, that's on a normal domestic sewing machine. You drop the feed dogs down, and then you move the cloth around under the needle to make the shapes. So I did all different kinds of shapes in all the sections. There I did some squirrely pebbly things, some feathery things, some flamey things, pebble and feather hybrids, just lots and lots of free machine quilting. And I do remember that I really enjoyed the designing. I really enjoyed the laying the pieces on the black and seeing how they looked. I did not enjoy the black satin stitch. I think it took weeks and weeks and weeks. But I did love doing the free machine quilting. So anyway, that's my mandala. That's our inspiration for this week. So this week I thought we'll make a smaller one. Well, you can make any size you like. But I'm going to make a smaller one for my journal. So we'll do raw edge applique, and then we'll do some sort of slow stitching in between the spaces. So that's this week's project, a mandala. I'll see you in a bit at my desk. Okay, here I am at my desk. I've made another little video how I drew this, because if I did that here, this would get, mega long. So if you want to draw, either get some ideas to do your own drawing or to reproduce my drawing, then do go and watch that video. So I'm not going to talk any more here about the drawing. Hope that's okay. So I've got, what you'll need is a background square. I've gone for a 6-inch square, which will be slightly too big for my journal. I realised much later, but anyway, it doesn't matter, it'll hang out the edge. So you need a background square, and I've backed it with some sheet. I don't like to use a hoop, so I always stitch on double layers. If you want to just use a single layer and you like to use a hoop, then, you go for it. So then what you need to do with your background square, and I've chosen black inspired by the mandala quilt that I just showed you, is you need to mark yourself some guidelines. When you've watched the drawing video, you'll see that I drew myself lines across the diagonals and lines here and here as reference points. So you need to reproduce those on the cloth. And I can see them, you probably can't. All I did was fold it in half and half again, and then go and give that a really good press, more accurately than that, and give it a really good press with the iron, and then the same on the diagonal. And then when you press on your diagonal lines, you just need to be careful that you don't press out your other lines. Ask me how I know. Alternatively, if you had some kind of tool to mark on cloth and you wanted to draw your lines that you could later get rid of, then you could do that as well. That just will help you with the placement. And then to create your templates, when you've done your drawing, if you're going to do it this way, I'll talk in a minute about other possible ways of doing it. You'll have your little templates, one for each section, So I've got my little corner templates. I use tracing paper because I had it, but you could also just do black, black pen lines around one of each of your shapes, and then you could see through with regular copy paper, especially if you hold it up against a window. So you don't need to make 8 templates here, 8 here, 8 here. No, one of each is enough. Okay, so in my case with my drawing it was just 4 templates plus the centre circle. So there are my 4 little templates. If you didn't want to fiddle about with the applique and these teeny tiny pieces, you could use a lighter coloured cloth and draw your design on and just do it purely with stitching. You could, if you were someone who had like ink tents or something that colours onto cloth, you could draw your design and colour it in with something like that, or paint with very, very thin acrylic paint if you used acrylic paints. Very thin, otherwise it won't be nice to stitch through. I think ink tents, if you've got ink tents, they're the best. I don't use them myself, but I know Marion on Marion's World uses them a lot, and I have other friends who use them. Another alternative I thought is if you have some cloths, and I couldn't really find anything on a small enough scale, but if you can imagine, if you had some cloths that have, don't point with that, with motifs on like this is a sort of paisley print, or flowers, or any sort of motifs that were the right scale, you could just cut those motifs out and use those in your mandala. Just choose 8 of each if you're going for an 8-section mandala. So that's another possibility. So I hope that gives you enough options. I'm going to do some applique. Raw edge. I'm not needle turning these teeny tiny things. If you made a centre circle, here's mine cut out already. If you wanted to do it like, without a raw edge, and you don't do a needle turn applique, there was a Wonky Wednesday a couple of weeks ago where I showed my sort of cheats way of doing it. So you could have a look at that. So then I'm going to lay that on here, and I'm just going to centralise it somewhat by looking at my guidelines. If you're someone that likes to use that special sewing glue, or just a tiny weeny dab of glue stick rather than a pin, you go for it. And I just pin that on, and all I used for all my applique was just this grey sewing cotton. Oh, the other thing you need, obviously, if you're doing applique, is some little scraps of coloured cloth in various colours, and later on you'll need some threads. I've got my Orts tin that I've topped up with some brighter colours out of a big tangly mess that I've got in a box over there. Some scissors, I've got snippy snippies, and what else? Oh yeah, and if you fancied really going to town, you could do some beads and buttons and things, embellishing type things later. So I'm gonna just quickly applique this circle on, and I say quickly because I've done a whole other one all appliqued ready, which took me 2 tennis matches yesterday to do. Still watching Wimbledon here. It'll be over by the time you see this, but so I'm just coming through from the back. It was several hours work. And then I'm just doing tiny little stitches all around the edge in this neutral colour. If you use invisible thread, if you do a lot of applique, then you could use that. I just prefer to use a neutral colour of cotton. But this is just for me a means of getting the cloth onto the background, because the real fun will start with the fancy stitching. It's a bit like the crazy, and I did think of doing it in 2 videos again, like we did the crazy. Remember when we did the crazy patchwork, I did a week of piecing the blocks together and then a week of doing the embellishing. But I thought, well, really, I think most of you already know how to do this. If you didn't know already, we have done, in Fantasy Feather we did raw edge applique, for example. You don't need to sit and watch me for an hour and a half doing the same thing over and over again. But if you don't, I'm just going off the edge of the applique into the background, and then just coming up about 1/8 of an inch all the way round. And I just did want to show you the next stage around, just to show you how to adjust the placement and so on, and then I'll get my one I made earlier. If you're British, I don't know, do you know Blue Peter in other countries? And is Blue Peter still going? My children certainly watched it. It's a children's programme that's been going for years and years. And they do all kinds of fun things. You know, they show you how to make things, they go on field trips, there's pets in the studio. I remember John Noakes and Shep were my era. But I guess it's a children's magazine programme, is that what they call it? But when they did a craft, they often did crafty projects, they would show you so far, and then they'd always say, and here's one we made earlier, and then they'd produce the one. So that's a bit of a phrase in British English, here's one I did earlier. And that's brought me back to the beginning of my circle. So I can just leave that needle in there, I'll just stick it in the back somewhere, get the pin out. So then for my next round on this, these little points here, can you see, where I've written SS stands for satin stitch. I didn't want to applique this complex shape with these tiny points, so I'm going to, around my circle, do some satin stitch in a minute. So the next sections that are appliqued are these with the A in, these little pie shape, I don't know what you call them. So I just traced one of them onto my tracing paper, just one of the shapes, because they're all the same when you've drawn them accurately, but it doesn't really matter. They will be all the same now. So I've just drawn that onto my tracing paper, and I drew around that with, I've got this blue pen that I've had for years and it's still going strong, onto my cloth 8 times. Cut them out, just cut this one out. The other thing is, on the one I did earlier, the one I made earlier in Blue Peter Styly, I was able to go and wet it to get rid of all the blue pen and make sure it had really gone, and then dry it again. When you're cutting, I think I've said it before, keep the scissors straight and turn the thing you're cutting, whether it's cloth or paper. So there's my little shape. So those, if you have a look on here, where they meet are on the lines that you pressed. So there's a horizontal line that I pressed through there, so they meet there, and then on the diagonal line, so they meet. So that's why those guidelines are important, if it's important to you that you place them correctly. So they go in the sections that you can't see on this black cloth, and then they'll be about, if you refer back to here, they're a sort of a 1/4 of an inch away from the circle. So I just do it by eye, but if you once you get them all on and they're all right, more or less in the right place, do you see? You can fiddle about so that they meet here and that it looks right there. And that, to me, is the most important thing, is just that they look right. I've only done 3, but I think you get the idea. Do you see? So once you've got all your 8 laid on, and you look at the star that they form and make sure that looks correct and that you're happy with the layout, and then I just put a little applique pin in each one, or a dot of glue if that's what you prefer to do, and then applique all around the edge of those. And then you do that again with these next shapes that look like skates, you know, the fish, I think, I don't know. Just look at your guidelines, so the point of those lays on those guidelines, and then where they come here, they're halfway this shape. So you're just looking as you go along at your layout, and then the same with these pieces and then the corner pieces. I hope that's all enough information. I'll now show you the one that I've done. I'll put that one away now, and all these bits. Put all that to one side, I don't need any of that anymore, all that. I didn't, by the way, cut the circle. I drew with, I've got a circle template, but if you've drawn your circles with cotton reels, you can then just draw around your cotton reel onto your cloth. You don't need to, you know, unless you're doing the cheats applique, you don't need to go through the process of making yourself a template. So I kept this by me, my drawing, and I referred to it for my placement and so on, and chose my cloths and did all my applique and watched the tennis, and here it's coming in now from the left. Look up, I'm showing you something. I know a lot of you like it when I say look up. So here we go. So you see I did the green it's a bit wonky here and there. How shall I point out the wonkiness? I made sure this star was more or less, well, that's a bit wonky, but I don't mind. See here, the gap's slightly wider than there, but the overall impression I was happy with. And then for this next round, I chose 2 different colours because it kind of makes a square overlaying a square. Do you see what I mean? So I did alternate pink and red, so just to emphasise that that looks like a square, and then that looks like a square. Hope that makes sense. And then I used this pattern cloth just to give it, because I just love this little scrap of pattern cloth. And then the 4 corners I did with the purpley stuff. So all I did was just stitch in the grey around all the edges of all those pieces. I'll show you the back, do you see? It took me quite a long time. Bit of blue pen that didn't go away. So now I'm going to do the fun part. So the first thing I'm going to do is the satin stitch to make this into this little star, and I have to decide what colour I'm going to do that in, and now the fun really starts. I've got this, but that's only that bit, and that's not going to be enough. I haven't got much purple in embroidery floss. I've got purple in cotton pearl, but it's not my favourite thing to stitch with. Just find it a bit. I find embroidery floss softer. I might use this. The trouble when you're only working with bits is wondering if you've got enough. These 2 are not exactly the same colour, but they're pretty close. Do you know what, I'm just going to start with this. I think it'll be enough. I'm sure it will, it's only a little thing. Oops. Oh, it's already cut into lengths. Excuse me when I sort my thread out. I'll start with this bit. I'm going to use 2 strands. I just like stitching with 2 strands. Get rid of those as well. So I'm going to get 2 strands off. But you know, if you want to use thicker to make the satin stitch go quicker. You go for it. I mean, I fully encourage you to draw your own mandala if you feel so inclined. But also, as always, feel free to draw mine. When I made this one, I drew it as it appeared. When I made the one that I showed you earlier, that's really long, that thread. That's going to get really snaggy, but you know me. Can't find my needle. I'm going to go with it anyway. I'm probably getting a big knot. Yeah, when I drew the one, I think I mentioned it in the little video where I showed you the one I made by machine years ago. I drew the mandala on an 18-inch square with none of these gaps in between, and cut it out, cut all the pieces out. And I think I said in the video that I drew it on freezer paper. I don't think I did. I think I drew it directly onto the fusible, you know, with the paper on one side, on a square of fusible, on the paper side obviously, and then cut that out and then ironed those onto the pieces. And then when I laid, then my backing was much bigger, and then I sort of exploded it out, you know, to create the gaps as I went, in case you're interested in doing one like that. So my star points here come in this black star that's already there. Do you see? Here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make those points just with one big stitch. So I'm going to come up sort of by eyeballing halfway between those 2 little green points. And then I'm going to go down on the edge of the circle, sort of level with that point, but just by eye. If you want to get all super accurate and measure and draw lines, and you know, as always, you do you. And I'm going to go around and do all that first, I think. Now I'm going to come up here. Oh, thread hair, black fabric and thread hair. And now I've snagged the corner of my applique. So I'm just going to do those like that first, all the way round. Oh, how many times does that happen? Does that happen a lot to you? you stab your knot with your needle when you come through the back. It's one of those things, if you tried to do it, you wouldn't be able to. And with satin stitch, especially when you're hoopless, I mean, I'm not satin stitching yet, but it's important to not pull anything too tight. If you remember when we did the stacked running stitch, when we had the solar eclipse, that is a kind of satin stitch because you've got all those stitches laying very close together. So again, I'm just going to eyeball halfway between there and there. You can sort of draw a line with your needle. About there, I think, is right. And if you go around first doing these big stitches before you start the satin stitch, if it looks wrong and you really have to take it out, then you know, it's a lot easier than taking out a load of satin stitch. Whoops. But I think if you enjoy doing these, then I think probably if you enjoyed the crazy patchwork, you'll enjoy these as well. It's different, it's more designed rather than, you know, random shapes. But there's similarities in the process, I think, where you, you know, create the background and then go to town embellishing it. So I'm just going to whip my way around, making my star. Just looking all the time, using the reference points that are there on the cloth to guide me. Because, you know, if you measure and it's all super accurate, then of course it will look super accurate. But to me, it's more important that it looks right to me. Do you see what I mean? So if you look at it and it's pleasing to you, then it's good. It's, you know, as it should be, because that's what's important. Of course, you do have to pay attention and stand back from it and, you know, really look at it as a whole. I'm already liking that I've got this gold, so I'm glad I didn't have any purple, because it's picking up on the gold in here, I think, and livening up the middle. And the thought has come unbidden into my brain that I would like a mandala rice bag. It would be a lot of work because you'd have to make 4 of these. Well, I suppose you could just have a mandala on one side, but someone asked me in the comments recently how many rice bags I had and how many rice bags I'd made. I think I've got about 7, which isn't very many really. But I think I've probably made, well, I guessed in reply, about 50. I think it must be at least that, because I've made them quite often as gifts. They, you know, 'cause they're lovely to put gifts in and give, you know, then the bag's a gift. And also they always go well at exhibitions, so whatever work I'm exhibiting, I make rice bags in a similar style of, you know, the main piece. So I think I must have sold a few over the years. So I'm guessing 50 in total. Might be wrong. See, that point there is smaller. But I think it's okay because I think this gap is more important. I can't tell you what level of accuracy is right for you because it depends on what makes you happy. I think this one's going to be, I was trying to fiddle about and make it less, but I think it's going to be shorter and wider anyway. Oh, it's okay, it'll pass mustard. So right now I'm going to do some satin stitch just to fill in those spaces. So basically just filling the space in with big stitches. So I'm going to start with this last one that I did, and you can sort of lay the thread on to audition, and you want to come up super close to it. And you can go up and down on the back as well, rather than going from side to side. And you know, like now I've gone down there, I could come up here and go over and over like that, but I think it uses less thread if you just come up slightly next to where you came out. And if you've got a gap like I've got back there, just go back and fill it in. I'm just colouring in with the thread basically. And you can decide which direction you want to go in. I seem to be just going this way. Because that will give a different look as well. So you see, even this is going to take me a long time. It's going to take me ages and ages. I'm glad I didn't do all the applique here as well. We'd have been here all day, literally all day. You could also, if you didn't like the look of those big stitches, draw those lines to make your start with your erasable pen of whatever kind you had, or pencil. And then do your satin stitch, and then afterwards just do a little back stitch around the edge of your satin stitch. I can't get one going that way now, I'm just going to do one going that way just to fill that gap. That would be another option. I'll fill that in when I come back round. I think this one I'm going to do differently, just for the fun of it. I'm going to go into the point. And then I'm going to go, I'm going to come up down there. I think this is actually what I should have done in the first place, and I'm going to come up just inside those 2 points and go down that way, parallel to that one. I think that's better. Yeah, I should have done that there. Don't like that, I might take that out. Because I think this fills better, and I think the, you know, because it's following the lines of the star points. Whoops, don't pull it too tight, Catherine. You will regret it. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I can take that out because that was at the beginning. So I can start at my knot end and take it out, leaving enough of a tail to fill in. But I won't bore you with watching me do that. Hello, Stells. Yeah, that's better that way. Do it that way. Don't do it that way, do it that way. Well, unless you like the look of that way. I think that way looks much better. You get that nice little line up the middle of the star where the stitches meet as well. Whoops. Not my favourite stitch to do satin stitch, but I do like the look of it. And especially because I've got gold on black, you know, so your background shows through a lot. But I just thought it's preferable to appliquing those tiny little star points. Sorry about my thumb. It is my habit to squish my stitches down with my thumb when I've stitched them. But I don't expect you're watching anymore, you'll all be doing your own thing. You'll all be stitching or knitting or crocheting. So, by the time you watch this, we will know if England won the Euros. I very much doubt it. I expect Spain will win. Apologies if you don't know what I'm talking about. There's been the European Football Championships going on. England, unbelievably, have made the final, having beaten the Netherlands. Sorry, Machtelt, and any other Dutch people watching. But I was very happy. Following the English football team is generally, what they say is it's not the despair, it's the hope that gets you, not the despair. But I must say we have been doing better in recent. We still haven't won anything. We won the World Cup in 1966 when I was 1 year old. Of course, I don't remember that. But my mum came round and Lily was here with her boyfriend. Joey couldn't come, unfortunately, he was working. Hans was working away, which was maybe a good thing, being as how he's Dutch. But my neighbour opposite is Dutch. And she's not really very interested in the football, but because it was, you know, an international competition and it was against England, she got a little bit interested and she messaged me. She was gardening. It was dark. Well, the sun had set because the kickoff was at 9 p.m. our time. But she was still out in her garden because she's a bit crazy like that, gardening by the light of the setting sun. And apparently someone had texted her to say that when England, because Holland scored first and then England equalised, and someone texted her to say England had equalised. So she texted me. It's very possible that she's listening to this. Hello, if you are, Eveline. And she sent me a message saying to leave my window, my door open. Our living room, it doesn't have a window, it has a glazed door. She said to leave my door open so that she could hear me either crying or roaring. We did have the door open because it was a warm evening. And but when England won, she put on one of the England football songs on her stereo, really loud, so that we could hear. I mean, she's a neighbour, but, you know, a neighbour in this village is still quite, I don't know how far, she's a few hundred yards away. And luckily the next neighbours along are also a few hundred yards away. And they are a couple who are French and English. The chap's French and the woman's English. And I'm pretty sure they were watching it as well. But yes, it was very nice of her. She said she put the song on for me so that we could have a party. So I've been watching football. One more game against Spain on Sunday. Fully expect Spain to win, and in fact they deserve to win because they've been playing brilliantly. And then also on Sunday is the men's final of Wimbledon. It's Saturday. I'm sitting here stitching on a Saturday for me. So by the time you watch this, all this will be over. This afternoon is the ladies' final. I'm looking forward to watching that. I will be rooting for Barbara Krejcikova, largely because her mentor was a player called Jana Novotná, who's no longer with us, but she was very much a favourite of mine and my mum's when we used to go regularly to Wimbledon. Lovely Jana, who famously lost one year to Steffi Graf after being very far ahead. I think she was a set up and 5 games to love up. So if you don't know tennis and the scoring system, that means, like, you know, one more game and she'd won the whole thing, the championships. And she choked, unfortunately. She just went to pieces and lost. And when she came to get her runners-up prize, which were in those days presented by the Duchess of Kent, who always struck me as a lovely lady, she started crying and the Duchess of Kent gave her a big hug. It was a lovely moment. A very sad moment for Jana, but anyway, so I'll be supporting Barbora Krejcikova because Jana was her mentor. Not that I have anything against the other player, Rybakina, who's a fantastic player. I know it's not Rybakina. What am I talking about? Pay attention, Catherine. No, it's not. I was thinking all along it's going to be Rybakina again, but it's not. No, it's an Italian woman. Called Jasmine.
Yasmina. Can't remember her last name. No, it's completely gone. No, yeah, that's right, because neither of them have ever won it, so... I'll be, and yes, the Italian woman's been playing very well. Jasmina, let's call her, because I can't remember her last name. Those of you who are following the tennis will all be shouting it at me. So this afternoon I shall be watching that. And then tomorrow will be the men's final, where I will be supporting Spain in the form of Carlos Alcaraz. Well, he won last year. He's young. I think he's my son's age, and he's already won Wimbledon. My son's 22. But he rather cheekily, when he won his semi-final match in front of a crowd of predominantly English people, made reference to the football on Sunday. And there was some good-natured booing. It was good-natured. I'm really liking the look of this gold on the black. And the other thing I'm wondering, if anybody knows who lives in other countries, like, well, other countries where there are Grand Slams, so that would be the US, Australia and France, if they have things, something like the Wimbledon queue. Because my mother says she thinks that in France it's all ticket, the French Open. So I'm just wondering if in the US and Australia you have that where you can just go and queue and get on, you know, the show courts. If you're in any of those countries and you know, please tell me. I could Google, but I'd rather ask my friends. Maybe some of you have queued, if there is queuing there, maybe some of you have queued in those other countries. So I'd love to know how that is. I'm getting round the star. I'm definitely going to pull out that first one, but I won't do it now, like I said, because I think it's much nicer with these little stitches meeting on the centre line. And I might even have enough with just this bit of thread, because I took such a long bit. And I'm also thinking I might, I've come out the same hole and pulled my stitch out. No. I think I might use some of the embroidery stitches from the crazy patch that we used in the crazy patchwork. They're not from there, but you know, the ones we used there. Because I have been using them more. I mean, you all those of you who've been here a while know that I predominantly do running stitch. Because that's what I like to stitch. But since we've did the crazy patchwork, even on my work where I would normally just be doing running stitch, seed stitch, and a little bit of a few French knots here and there maybe, and the odd cross stitch, that's about pretty much mostly what I do. I have been doing some feather stitch, some herringbone stitch, and some, I need to do another one in there, I left too big a gap, and some Cretan stitch, and that's that long rusty scroll, that cloth that hung outside for 10 years. I've been stitching on that, and I've been incorporating some of those embroidery stitches on that, but in a more, you know, not trying to get them all the same size or even or anything, in a more organic way. And I did a little video of me doing that for my Ko-fi supporters, so if you're on my Ko-fi, then that's up already if you haven't seen it yet. Or it will be up already by the time you watch this. And I've got one more point to do. So yeah, so it's nice to... I've seen a few people in the Facebook group doing, you know, one project and using elements of another. Judith, was it Judith? I think it was. Hello, Judith. On her zokin, her little floor cloth from last week, she put fulas in the corner from Kawandi week. I just loved that. I just thought that was fabulous. to have a little Zokin Kawandi mashup. It's just, yeah, when one project informs another, when you just incorporate ideas or techniques or whatever into other work, that's, yeah, I really enjoy doing that, and it's lovely to see other people doing it as well. Am I going to have enough thread? Well, certainly not to redo that last one. Left too big a gap again. The other thing you can do with satin stitch if you leave too big a gap is, as you come back down here, I'm showing you something. See here I've got a bit of a gap. I can just push that over with my needle a bit and push so that this next stitch sort of moves it over, do you see, and closes the gap. Something else you can do. Can be very mindful, satin stitch. And it's a very good way of filling an area, obviously, that you don't want to applique. It gives another texture, it's not only because it's fiddly. So I'm going to try and push that over. If it doesn't work, you can always go back and fill in again anyway. I think I'm going to call it good enough, mostly because I've nearly run out of thread. So yeah, so I think I'm going to do some lazy daisy, some French knots, and I might do some whipped running stitch, aka Marion stitch. I call it Marion stitch because Marion likes to do it. Marion on Marion's World. I know a lot of you watch her as well. I think I can just squeeze one more stitch out of this little bit. And then maybe, baby, if there is enough, I can go and fill that gap. Just going to go over there and fill in that gap. I want to get in between there. I'm just laying my needle on horizontally to find the right point to go down. Right, end that off. So I'm going to end it off over here somewhere away from my starting knot. Here comes Fred. And if I want to come back and pull out that first one, I can just get my knot there out, cut my knot, pull it out, and then weave that end in and re-stitch it. But I won't do that now. Oh yes, I like that. I'm liking that, but that's taken already quite a long time. Right, so I'm going to do some lazy daisies on there, I think. I'll use this green, this darker green, and I want to contrast. Don't start wrestling now, Stels. Don't start wrestling, please. I could use this little bit. It's only a little bit, but it'll be enough for that, I hope. I hope. My idea really was to take some of the colours of other cloth that's on here and use it, you know, to sort of tie it together in some way. That's 3 strands, so I'll just get one off and use this. I can now hear the strimmer going. Apologies if you can. The grass has not stopped growing. It's been still very rainy in between a bit of sun, perfect growing weather, not too cold. I hope all of you who have been in the path of Hurricane Beryl are safe and sound. So I'm going to do lazy daisies in here. I think I'm going to come up. I'm sure you can hear that. I hope it moves away quickly, its hands. I'm going to come up in this point here, but about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And I'm going to do a lazy daisy, am I? Oh, make your mind up, Catherine. Yeah, I'm going to do a lazy daisy up the middle. So lazy daisy, I make my stitch, make sure my thread's round. If you didn't do Crazy Patchwork Week or you're new here or whatever, there is a little video as well showing only the stitches for Crazy Patchwork that you could have a look at if you're unsure of any of these. I think I'm going to do 3, so I do the middle one first just to get it in the right place. And then one each side. I just find that's the best way to space them out. Apologies for that noise. I don't think it'll last long. At least I hope not. Now Fred's found a bag to rustle about in. Oh, that's, yeah. Again, don't pull them too tight. There's one. So now I'm just going to jump across because it's not far enough to stop and start. Do the middle one again, and I'm just going to do that all the way around as well. So in this way I think you're sort of adding more depth to the mandala. So when it's building the layers, it's talked about that before. That I kind of see in relation to mixed media, you know, when you watch mixed media artists building layers. It's the same with cloth. You've got your background cloth, and then you've got, if you do applique or collage or something like that on the top surface, and then you can do stitching. You can of course put colour onto cloth, either Stells, sorry about that, either by eco printing or by using ink tents, or you know, those kinds of things. The ink tents is not something I've done, but I very much like the look of it when I've seen it. But I don't have any. Stells! I'm sorry. Stella, come here. With the strimmer going and you racing up and down, that's not very nice at all for the people, so please stop now. I know it's Fred winding you up. The trouble is, there's no point in trying to tell Fred to stop because you won't take any notice. I mean, Stella's not, you know, 100% reliable at notice taking. They're now wrestling. We're trying to be all zen here doing our mandalas, and we've got strimmers going, and now we've got you two wrestling. This is not going to get me all the way around this thread, and I've only got half a length. That's the problem when you use something you've only got a tiny bit of. Oh well, if I run out, I'll run out. I'll have to do it a different colour. We'll see. I'm definitely going to run out, because if I can only get halfway with this. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 4 in this colour and 4 in another colour, and then it'll look. I'm going to pull them out. It's not something I often do. I'm going to pull them out. And I can find the right end to pull. I can do it from the back, it's easier. She said, hopefully. That little anchor stitch. I'm going to pull them out, 2 of them out, and I'm going to do alternate in this colour and alternate in another colour. Okay, I did stop recording because the strimmer was going on and on. Now he's moved away, so hopefully you can't hear him anymore. But I did use the time to finish the lazy daisies in the green that I started, and I also went back and took out that satin stitch and redid it. And what I did was I cut one of the stitches somewhere in the middle of the area I wanted to pull out, and then pulled it back both ways, which left me with 2 tiny little tails. And then I wove a needle into the backing cloth, a big-eyed needle, threaded the tail in, it's here, look, and pulled it through, and pulled it through, and hopefully they'll now hold. So anyway, while I've still got a lot of this lovely gold left, I thought I would do some running stitch around the middle of this section, and I'm going to do them somewhat evenly because I think I'm going to whip it, dear Henry. Fred's found a place up high on top of a box where Stella can't get him, but that's why he's in here wrestling, because he doesn't like the strimmer. And I'm glad he doesn't like the strimmer, because it would be very dangerous. So yeah, it's all calmed down a bit now. It's all a bit much. So I'm just going halfway that line, trying to keep my stitches as evenly as I can. As even as I can. And I also wanted to talk a little bit more about mandalas themselves. They're used in lots of different spiritual traditions, not only Buddhism, and you know, I'm not an expert on those spiritual traditions whatsoever, so I'm not going to talk really much about them. But also in Christianity, you know, if you think of a rose window in a cathedral, I'm thinking of Notre Dame in Paris in particular. That is also a mandala, because there's just something so wonderful, mystical almost, about the shape. But it's also the process of making, and that's why I really wanted to, you know, include it in our slow stitching journey. I'm thinking in particular of the sand mandalas. I hope my head's not cut. I feel like my head's coming in all the time. I'm thinking in particular of the sand mandalas, and the people who make those, they're monks, they're trained for a long time in how to do that. It's not just, you know, they're not slapdash like I am. Yes, so the monks are trained to make these images, and they use different coloured sands, which are poured through a special little device whose name I can't remember. Like a little funnel-y type thing, that's not the proper name for it. And the mandalas are made over days and weeks even, just of poured sand, you know, laid out in the same way that we've done here with cloth, only obviously much more complex. And when it's done, the sand is all swept into a pile as a ritual. In letting go, and to me that is the very essence of the process being the important thing, and not the finished article, the finished thing. I mean, I'm not going to make you destroy your mandalas, don't worry. I have thought about it. Well, I haven't thought about making you all destroy your mandala, making it, you know, inviting you to. All I can ever do is invite you to do things. But it's, you know, it's the book bundle letting go project is already challenging to let go of control to that degree, but to actually create something knowing that it's going to be immediately destroyed, it's a good thing to think about, at least, you know. It doesn't mean you actually have to do it, but to contemplate while you're working. And that really makes you focus on the process. It's the process that's important. It's not the finished thing. So I invite you to imagine that you're making a mandala out of sand. It's transient. It's not going to, you know, it's not about the finished thing. It's about the process. Although, of course, you will have the finished thing to put proudly in your journal or on your scroll or whatever it is you're making. It's just, yeah, what do they call that? Like a thought experiment. I'm really enjoying the look of the gold on the black. And I'm also really enjoying just following this line and the effect it's having, just this one little stitch. And I'm now thinking maybe I won't whip it, dear Henry, because I like the dash line in contrast to the straight lines. So again, that's been focusing on the process, because if you were just goal oriented in that little instance where I had talked about whipping this line of stitching, then you just go on and whip it, but you observe, you look, do I like it as it is? Do I want to do more? That is focusing on the process. And now as I come back around to the beginning, as always, like if I stitch a circle, I do the same thing. I just begin to start judging, because I don't like to have to make a big stitch or a small stitch or a big gap or whatever at the end. So I'd rather make small adjustments as I come along. So here I'll go, there's a space, there's a stitch, there's a space, there's a stitch, there's a space, there's a stitch. That's why I either need to make my stitches slightly bigger or my spaces slightly bigger. I'm going to go slightly bigger space there. And then a stitch. But you know, this is my process. If that doesn't bother you, then don't bother. Just go for it. There are little things that we all find bothersome. No, there are some. No, sorry, that's not what I meant. I mean, there's some of us find some things bothersome that don't bother other people. I'm definitely not going to whip that gold line because I just love it as it is. In fact, you know what? I'm even thinking I might just do the gold line in all those black spaces. Or should I do a different colour? I don't know. I'll wait and see. The next thing I wanted to do is put some beads on those lazy daisies. On these little lazy daisies. I just love that. I just love that little simple gold line of running stitch. Well, you know, I just do. Right, what colour beads do I want? I'm going to put my tin in the shop because it will be glary. I'm going to use this grey to stitch them on with. I need a superfine needle that will fit through my beads. Excuse my arm if you're looking. Superfine needle. Oh, there's one. Oh, it's got some black in it. Not enough. So I don't know what colour beads to choose. Also depends on if I've got 8 of the same, because most of my beads are from broken necklaces and things, so I don't have great big pots of, you know, 200 beads all the same. Of course I could put different coloured beads. I don't have to be all the same. I could do a different colour bead everywhere, or I could do 4 beads in one colour and 4 in the other, since I've done the lazy daisies, because my thread ran out. 4 of one and 4 of the other. I'm going to start by anchoring my beading thread. Yeah, it's not beading, it's just cotton. But you know what I mean. And coming up, I'm going to just put them at the base of each of these little clusters of lazy daisies. I wonder how black beads would look to pick up the black background. I've got only little black beads. Excuse me, talk amongst yourselves while I mess about with my beads. They're quite big ones. I'll just lay it on and see what I think. They're a bit big. I wanted teeny ones. What about these red ones? I think I like the red ones better, and there seems to be plenty. I'm just going to go for the red ones. Yes. So because I'm going to jump quite a long way and I don't want the thread tension easing and the bead coming loose, I'm going to take a little back stitch there to anchor it. Maybe even 2. And then I'm just going to jump to my next lazy daisy. And get another bead. Of course I should be putting these beads on at the end, because now I'll probably keep catching my thread around them, but I just wanted to see how they looked, so I'll just be careful and put up with it if it happens. Oh yes, I'm liking that. Also liking the fact that the strimmer has gone completely out of earshot, even for me. Many apologies, I really hope it wasn't disturbing. I'm sure he's unaware that I can hear and you can hear. I expect he wants to watch the tennis as well this afternoon. In his defence, next one. It also interrupts my flow, I'm sorry. You know, when I start wittering, talking, and then I have to stop. You know, because I in case you hadn't realised, it's entirely unscripted. No surprises there. But I mean, I usually start talking about something, and that leads me to start talking about something else, and on I go. And so now I feel like I have to start again. But anyway, let's recap. What have I talked about? I talked about the football, or the soccer, depending on what you call it. Oh no, I brought my tail through of that. That's not what I wanted to do at all. I've talked about the tennis. I've talked about mandalas a bit. Yes, when I made the that mandala that I showed you, the machine one, I made it just because I wanted to make one. I think it must have been Joey, my son, so I don't think Lily was old enough, was doing those mandala colouring books, I think. Excuse me. Or a poster. When I was younger, it was called doodle art. Doodle art. You got a poster in a big tube, just in black and white, and some pens with it. But I never used the pens that came with it. Oh no, because of course I had, you know, sets of 3 million colour. Well, not 3 million. I exaggerate a bit. I pull that bead loose. So I would get the poster, you know, the kit, if I begged and begged as a birthday or Christmas present. And then I would use my own felt tip pens, as we called them. Do they still call them felt tip pens? And I used to love doing those. And then my son Joey got a colouring book. Probably someone gave it to him as a present, and he started doing them. And then that reminded me of them, and at the time I was doing quite a lot of machine applique and a lot of free motion quilting. So that's how I came to make that one. And it actually hung at the Festival of Quilts. I can't remember if I mentioned that in my introductory video, which is, you know, it's not juried or anything, it's just open, you just enter on, and then it hangs there. I didn't win anything. There are various prizes awarded. I think it was the first year I'd submitted that and another one that did win an award, or a judge's choice, the other one, from Jenny Raymond, who's, the expression they use in the West Country is mad as a box of frogs. I'm sure Jenny Raymond, if she hears about me calling her that, would not mind at all. Jenny Raymond is the queen of folded patchwork. I have seen a talk, I've been to a talk that she gave to one of the local quilting groups where I used to live. And she's, when you say someone's mad as a box of frogs, it means in a joyous, eccentric, wonderful way. So it's actually a kind of compliment. But in that particular talk, she stayed fully clothed, but a friend of mine had seen her in, I mean, I'm talking about a room full of quilty ladies, you know, ladies in our demographic, as they say. She ended up down to her quilted underwear during the course of her talk. And her books, I've got one of her books somewhere, but I don't know where exactly, about folded patchwork. But there, and you read how she writes, it's equally hilarious. Anyway, why am I talking? Oh yeah, she gave me a judge's choice. So I entered another quilt in the same year as I entered the mandala, which is called Genoeg Ganzen, which is Dutch for enough geese, which is flying geese done in a three-dimensional folded way. Flying geese are the little triangular blocks. And I guess because it was folded, she was drawn to it because she's a folded patchwork person. Anyway, she gave me a judge's choice for that. But the poor old mandala, which was the point of my whole story, was hanging, and you've seen it, it's black with bright colours, as you saw, was hung in a very dark corner, and it looked like nothing, you know, it was just, I was quite disappointed. So I saw that one first, because you go there, you know, and you go and look for your own things. It's the first time I'm pretty sure I'd had my work in any kind of show. It's a buzz, as they say. And I was all disappointed because it was so badly lit and, you know, in a pokey corner somewhere. And then I went and saw my Genoeg Ganzen with Jenny with a rosette and a little note on it. You get a little envelope with what the judges said about your work. And that cheered me up no end. So yeah, thank you, Jenny. Right, so I think I want to do some more of this running stitch around this star. I do think I'm going to go for a different colour. What colour am I going to go for? Shall I do blue? There's no blue in here, there's only purple in that. Oh, there's a bit of blue. Yeah, I'll go for this blue. Doesn't have to be matchy-matchy, it has to be whatever makes me happy. And I'm going to do some of this bright blue. And it's funny because on my drawing I liked the look of that dashed line that I did to represent stitching, which I did on the drawing really just as a visual guide so that I didn't, you know, so I didn't miss out the background areas, because the background areas are important to give this sort of stained glass effect. Otherwise your applique pieces will be up against each other. I got another nice tulip number 9 here, number 8, there's a number 9, that's a number 9, it'll be okay. Yeah, look, so I did that really just as a visual guide when I was drawing the mandala. But when I looked at my drawing, I liked the look of the contrast between the dashed lines and then I thought, oh, it's probably because it looks like stitching, and obviously I like the look of stitching. But liking that dashed line on there is translated to liking it on here. So I'm going to do more and get my thread caught around my beads. Do your beads last if you can possibly bear to. Started with a small stitch. It does make you all super, or it makes me all super pernickety and wanting to be accurate there. Whereas normally when I'm doing my endless lines of running stitch up and down all over the place, doesn't matter. But you know, a change is as good as a rest, my granny used to say. Oh yeah, I like the look of the blue as well. So I hope there is enough scope in this project for everybody to find a way to do it that they enjoy. I know, like I say, I'll be very interested to hear from you, and see it in the Facebook group and on Instagram and so forth. If you tell me that you like this or don't, but you know, if you say I really love this, if you also love the crazy patchwork, because in my mind there's some similarities. So it's always interesting to know if other people have the same thing. Or if you look at it and you say, oh no, I don't want to do that, it's far too finicky, and you find a completely different way to do it. You know, still in the spirit of the mandala with it's just the repeating of the sections. That's you know, and the radiating pattern and repeating the sections. And 8 is traditional and quite, you know, that's what you commonly see. But you could do more complex ones, or I'm not sure, a simpler one, you know, if you went down to 4 or maybe 6. but 8 is, I think it's a good number. And if you do in a more muted palette, not in the bright colours, you know, just with stitching, you could do one completely monochrome just with stitching. And just different shapes and textures, but the same colour. That's just the process, you know. I am quite enjoying the look of this with the bright colours. For a change. Do like bright colours. But I also like earthy colours, as you know. And I'm loving this running stitch. And I'm glad I'm loving it as well. It's like, you know, the humble running stitch. You don't have to always be doing fancy stitches to get a nice effect. Right, here we go back to the beginning again. I think I can get stitch, space, stitch. There we go. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I like it. I like it a lot. And now I need to think about the pointy points. I think I might keep the blue actually. Yeah, I think I might use the, I've got plenty of the blue, yeah. I'm paranoid after I ran out of the pink and had to unpick. Although I am liking the look of the red and the pink echoing the red and the pink there, so, you know. I'm going to do a little motif, I think, on here just with straight stitch. So I'm going to do a biggish straight stitch up there. And then I'm just doing it by eye. Like that. And then I'm going to put a French knot, I think, in a different colour. As if it's, I might do, or I might do a bead, or I might, I don't know, I might do a cross and a bead, I don't know. I might do any number of things. I'm going to get my little blue straight stitches in first and not get ahead of myself. I'm not jumping all that way because it's too far. I'm ending off and starting again. So, and I'm not worrying too much about if all this, you know, all these motifs end up exactly the same. I'm just eyeballing. But if you want to measure and draw and, or just put little dots, you know, you don't have to draw the full thing. You can just put little dots to mark your in and out points. And you do you. And that off. I'm just doing 2 little back stitches to end off. It's a nice backstory as well, look. But the front is. I'm not going to make you put it in your book upside down. I always feel like I have to say that if I say backstory. You're all going, oh no! I'll make you. Invite you to. 2 more to go. So I know that last week was very simple, with the Zokin, and I was very pleased to see how many of you said that you were making them for using as well, which is wonderful. And I've got, well, I've got to finish mending the tea towel. I have not got round to it, I'm afraid. But I'm also going to make some like that rather than my usual just cut up, you know, cut up rags. Because there's just something so lovely and tactile about them. Of that enough, I expect so. But I thought this was a nice contrast to that as well. You know, I think it's nice to mix it up. I like to mix it up in my own work. Of course, I have my favourite things to do. But every now and then you want to do something different. So I'm trying to vary the weeks. And also because then there's something for everyone, hopefully. And if you're bravely doing them all, even if you don't like them, then it's only one week you don't like, and then hopefully the following week is more your thing, if I keep mixing it up. Right, so there's my little arrows, or whatever, arrowheads. I think I'm going to do a bead on the end of each one. So I like the way the beads shine as well. I don't know what colour beads to use now. I seem to be having difficulty making decisions today. Do I like those? Are they just too much? No, they're too much. Well, maybe those can be black beads because I must have 4 of those. Oh yes, whoops, I'll do black beads. Anchor it first. I can smell cut grass though, which is nice. I didn't like the sound of the strimmer, but I do like the smell of the cut grass. I got the window closed, so I don't know where it's coming in. Where's that little black bead that went hopping over there? Come back, come back. This is definitely from a necklace. Yes, I like the look of the black bead. And of course I'm going to have to end that and start it again. Very time consuming, putting beads on all over the place. But, you know, it's a funny expression, isn't it? Time consuming. Just means it's using time. But we often say it when it's something we don't enjoy. And that's not what I mean about putting beads on. I wonder if that's in the sense of the word consuming, that sense of not enjoying it. I don't know. I don't know. Just popped in my head. I do know. I'm liking my little mandala. It's nice when you like what you make, isn't it? That seems like an obvious thing to say, but you know, when you really like it, I suppose. When it comes out better than it looked in your head. I mean, often what I like is when things come out how they look in my head, because if you get a... You know, I try not to do that, of course, but we all do, don't we? You get an idea in your head how a piece of work is going to look. And sometimes it doesn't, or it falls short, where you can't get it to look how you envisaged, how you wanted it. And that's when you're disappointed often. And then you have to try and find ways to either get past that disappointment or, you know, change the piece or alter the piece so that you do like it, or accept that it's never going to look like it looks in your head and it has to be something else, and let that be. Two more, yes, I do like that. So that's just added a bit of black into the coloured areas, I think, and brought it together a bit more. Very fine. This is still this grey DMC cotton from Tante Gilbert's box that I'm using. Only a tiny spool, but there does seem to be quite a lot on there. Oh, I hope we're still okay. There's a message on my phone saying that the battery was running out. And I know from experience that when I plug it in, it stops the camera. Oh dear, one of those days. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop, plug it in, and then make sure it's filming again. So apologies for another break in the broadcast. Okay, I plugged the thing in. I made sure it was recording. I stitched for about another 20 minutes and chatted away, and it wasn't there. So I don't know what happened. I'm really sorry. So here's my finished mandala. I'll just talk you through what else I did that nobody will ever see. I did some little double crosses. I think it's called Algerian cross stitch, when you do a cross with the diagonal legs, and then over that you do a cross with straight legs. And then I put tiny little beads, I hope it's focused, just in the middle. I did 2 lines more of running stitch around the very outside edges, and in the very corners I put 2 lazy daisies in yellow with a green stem, and I only had 2 of these green beads, so I put a green bead on 2 diagonal corners, so you can see it, and then a red bead on the other 2 diagonal corners. And then the last thing I did was in the very centre, on the cloth itself, is printed this little grid pattern with black dots. So in the middle of all the squares that the grid made, I put a black French knot. And I'm quite happy with it. So I hope you have fun making yours. I'm going to put it in my journal. Like I said, it's too big. And rather than having it hanging over that way, I think I'm going to let it fold. So I'm going to stitch it to this page, and then it will just fold as the book folds, and that'll be fine. So then I'm going to stitch it down this facing edge. I've just got some black cotton so it doesn't show. So yeah, apologies for that. I couldn't believe it. I checked, it was running, it was recording, and there was about 10 seconds of me saying we're recording again, and then it just stopped. I don't know if it doesn't when the battery's low, or I don't know. I'll have to look into it because it's a pain. Because I can't exactly, well, I suppose I could have unpicked everything and done it all again, but I hope you understand why I don't want to do that. But there was nothing, there was nothing else new to show you. It would have just been more chatting. And I've also looked back through the earlier part, and I do apologise that you can hear the strimmer. It's not as loud as I could hear it, luckily. So yeah, I'm sorry about that. And this is week 29, isn't it? So next week will be week 30. And I'm going to England, or I'll be in, no, I won't be in England yet. I'm going to England today, in the sense that Monday, when you're watching, for a couple of weeks. And I've already pre-recorded Wonky Wednesday because we've got our CQS meeting, so for the day after tomorrow. But after that I shall be making a couple of videos for you while I'm in England, so don't know what yet. There'll still be the Monday project happening, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Right, so that's stitched in. My pencil, so we are the 17th today. A lady asked me why I always write in pencil. I don't know if it's because of worrying about ink going onto the cloth, or whether I just prefer to write in pencil. I don't know. If you used a permanent ink, that wouldn't be a concern, but it's made me question myself why I do it. I haven't got an answer yet. When I have, I'll tell you. I think I just prefer it, is the simple answer. For the words, I'm just going to write, because it's so important and it's at the core of everything we're doing. I'm going to write it in capitals. Trust. You know what's coming, don't you? The process. That's all I'm putting. There we go. So there's my mandala. That's week 29, and I hope you enjoy making your own mandala, and I look forward to seeing them, those of you who share photos. And meanwhile, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.